forward to improving their football team, a stronger showing than we had the other night against the University of Utah. Looking forward to executing at a higher level, protecting the football at a higher level. And I think those two things in general will make a difference. From what I've seen of Central Florida already, an explosive quarterback, certainly a capable football team, and another difficult test. And that's, again, what most of our time and attention is focused on already. So I'll take questions, but whatever questions you might have.
Bronco, did the film confirm your beliefs that your team competed to the end of the game?
It really did. It was actually one of our, it's funny, one of our stronger defensive performances in a lot of critical situations. We had two plays that were poorly fit against what we call run fits at the end of the game. The timing of the game and when they happened, that was the problem. In terms of 8 or 9 players chasing a guy down as hard as they could go. If they played the same, they just didn't execute very well on that play, on those plays.
And after your efforts to restructure the offensive staff in the offseason, is the process working and the results aren't there, or how would you answer that?
I think it would be just that way. Certainly the results haven't shown it yet. The day-to-day functioning of the organization, and I think the way the players are responding, the way they're being treated, and the way they're being coached, all that I'm very comfortable with. At some point, that's going to show on game day. I'm convinced of that. It's certainly taking longer than what the fans would like, but I am confident and positive that is going to happen. And so I like the decision, the results forthcoming.
Bronco, are you still happy with having Brandon Dolman down on the sidelines, and are you going to change that in any way?
I don't intend to change it. Brandon will be given the choice to wherever he feels most comfortable, wherever he thinks the team needs him, and wherever he can be most effective. And that's not a decision I would like to impose on him, as I wouldn't have wanted to impose on myself. But the bottom line would be, where can he help our football team the most, and where can he be most effective from? And with his personality and with his strengths, I'm comfortable with where he is at the moment.
Have you heard from any officials about Travis Uwali's hit, and maybe there's talk there might be a suspension because of that?
I haven't. In fact, until you just brought it up, I haven't seen anything about it. I think both hits were legal, and I think they were both fair, and they weren't helmet to helmet, and they were shoulder pad to shoulder pad and aggressive plays that I thought were legal plays, and so I had to give it a second thought since you just asked right there.
And then over the weekend, the ACC expanded. Looks like the era of super conferences is upon us. You talked a few weeks ago about that. Is there a concern from BYU that you might be left out of this whole process?
You know, I haven't thought about being left out. I think the program is too strong with too much tradition and having won too many games recently to be left out. I don't really have much control or much say over how that would work. It surprises me a little bit that the Big East is part of this. But again, the inklings and the thoughts that this might be happening past couple of years with head coaches, you can kind of tell.
And then can you kind of take us through the process of why you're playing Central Florida, how that scheduling came about, and also is this kind of a sign of things to come where you'll be playing a lot of Conference USA teams?
Conference USA, they're willing to play, number one. In the independent scheduling, this one not so much because of where it is, but the middle to late games are the ones that are being more difficult for us to find. Conference USA has shown that they would be willing to play BYU in some of those areas. The Western Athletic Conference has shown some flexibility in wanting to do that. And so at this point, especially with the first year of putting independents together, we were taking the best matchups we could get. And Central Florida has a good team, has already shown that, and so it seemed like a good one to add.
What about the Friday games? I'm assuming that's kind of dictated by ESPN. Are you on board with that?
You know, it's the on-board part would be the exposure and people seeing us play. It certainly makes it more difficult to prepare. But at this point, having gone independent, some of those concessions have to be made for the exposure that we're hopeful for. And then hopefully I can coach the team at a level that we're playing well enough where that exposure really helps us.
Do you think more of your assistants were in the offices on Sunday, trying to look for ideas to change things around?
This past Sunday, I hope none of them were here. Sunday's not a day that I want them here, and nor is it a day that I believe they should be here.
And this morning, then, does that start earlier? And can you describe maybe the mood in the coaches' meeting as far as trying to go forward?
Monday mornings we start our staff meetings at 6 o'clock, and so the coaches are here before then, and a lot of determination, a lot of resolve, a lot of I think just diligence to help the program reach its potential at a faster rate than it currently is. I'm confident that that will happen. We'd all like to see it happen sooner rather than later.
Coach, what are you telling your team to prevent a hangover type effect against a good team like Central Florida?
I'm mainly focusing on the things that we can control and that are correctable. My personality isn't one that yells a lot and berates a lot. My personality is much more one of teaching, and so when I see them today, I'll show them the things that clearly could be corrected, that are in our control. Ask for them to make sure they put emphasis on those things and look forward to applying those things against our next opponent, and hopefully that leads to a cleaner game and a higher quality of play.
Coach, after going through a couple of losses, what's the process of making changes to improve versus overreacting after a performance like Utah?
Yeah, it's a great perspective. The simple, and if you were to say any one thing in our last game that determined the outcome is 7 turnovers, regardless of, even if you're a much better team than your opponent, when you're turned over 7 times, you put the game at risk. If the teams are close, 7 turnovers is very difficult to overcome. And so, overreacting, there's no one that's more urgent and wants the team to perform at a higher level than I do and our coaching staff. When we learn to secure the football at a higher level, when we add some running game that can balance the passing game with it, and then I think play a full 4 quarters of dominant defense. That's kind of sequentially what will happen when I think this team reaches its potential. That's what you'd see.
Bronco, do you have any sort of relationship with Coach O'Leary? Have you met him in the past? And then also, what can you tell us about Central Florida?
Yeah, I have met him. I coached his son at Northern Arizona, who was my free safety. And so his Coach O'Leary came to visit one time. They had a bye week and we were playing Eastern Washington, so I had a chance to introduce myself to him. And that's really the only time I've had a chance to meet him. In terms of Central Florida, I've seen 2 games so far this morning. A very, very talented and athletic quarterback. A very unique system with some option elements, some zone read, quarterback scrambling out of the pocket. So he kind of is a creative presence that makes things go. I've not seen their defense yet. I just finished watching them beat Boston College 33-3. And so, pretty good team.
Coach, right here. The running game, is it a concern now? Last week it wasn't.
Yeah, it is, because as there becomes increased emphasis placed on it, eventually you'd like to see the result, either statistically or even signs of it that says we're making progress that way. I haven't seen enough yet to say that we're making progress in relation to the emphasis, and that's got to keep going.
What can change in practice this week to make that progress?
I think the design has to be looked at first and foremost. What runs are we doing, and then the second thing is with whom are we doing them with? and then in what situations. So that's got to become more clear, and then that's got to fit into the offensive plan as to when those plays are called and in relation to throwing the ball. So really, we haven't seen yet what the run game should look like in relation to our offense, and that's going to have to happen soon.
Coach, you had 2 turnovers and you already trailed before the defense even took the field on Saturday. Do they have a good reason to be frustrated with the offense?
You know, the greatest thing that's happening right now, and I had the defense around me on one knee on a couple of occasions, and they're fiercely competitive. They have a lot of resolve, and handled a lot of sudden change situations very, very well. I had 0 complaints with how they played, other than the long run they gave up in the 4th quarter with the poor run fit, and at the time they gave up. But I think they'll continue to play and play very well for a long time. And they are supportive of the team, the entire team, and there's no place for anything other than support for their teammates.
Coach, you talked about being independent and how you had to have almost a perfect run these next 3 years. How much can a loss like that set this team back if you don't respond strongly?
Oh, I think the second part of what you mentioned is the critical part. If we don't respond, it certainly could set us back. If we are able to respond and finish with a strong season, and so let's say that you win, is 7 games, is that a strong enough season? Is 8 games a strong enough season? Is 9 games a strong enough season? Or is 10? Certainly the number as it goes up increases your chances. And so that really, in the broader perspective, is something that I have to acknowledge right now, and then put all the rest of my time into helping us prepare at a high level as possible for Central Florida. And the more wins we can get, the better in year 1 of independence, and hopefully that can continue. But as we already can see, it won't be easy.
Bronco, does a loss like the deficit that happened on Saturday, is it worse because it was on ESPN with that new partnership with them?
Oh, I bet it is, because more people saw it, and it wasn't really indicative of, I think, that the 2 teams and playing at their highest level. Take nothing away from Utah, they played a very good game. We were mistake-laden and had a lot of miscues, but a lot of people saw that, and that might have damaged our credibility. That takes time then to rebuild.
After 3 games, it seems like in each of the games, the team as a whole has put together one half where they've played pretty well and another half where they've kind of underachieved. Yeah. How do you overcome that type of 2-quarter on, 2-quarter off?
It's a great question. It just shows, quite frankly, that our preparation hasn't reached the level to equal consistency yet for 4 quarters. And so as we continue to coach even harder with more diligence and even adding more volume and trying to make sure that then can translate over longer periods of time in the game, eventually it'll show how much harder we can push to make it happen without them not having them fresh to play the game. That's kind of the delicate balance.